Welcome back to Is It Crazy or Is It God?
What's up, guys? Is it crazy? Is it God? It's snowing today. Very interesting.
It is.
What's it? March 12th?
It's March 12th, and spring is next weekend.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Shout out to,
First day of
to
spring.
one of my good friends, Pat. He posted and said, I've worn t-shirt, tennis shoes, a jacket, and boots in a weekend. That's in this area, guys.
That's this area, yeah. It's always weird.
So, man, how was your week?
Oh, wow. My week was good. I was comforted by certain things that we read, certain things that I looked up in the Bible. And it's funny because, we all struggle with anxiety and fear and doubt, but I was able to really connect with some of the things that we've been learning over these past few weeks. And also it has sort of highlighted some other resources. And so me and James are kind of into learning about brain science and how the brain works and how anxiety plays into your life. And it's funny because I'm finding that a lot of the other resources that we sort of rely on, so certain books or certain experts, it's so funny that the things that they're saying supported by science and their expertise, some of the stuff I'm finding in the Bible too. So specifically related to visualizing and putting yourself in the moment and just trusting that what you feel and what you desire is real and that you already have it. And it's funny because to me, that's kind of like what prayer is, right? You're giving your anxiety to God and you're saying, okay, here's my desire, here's my anguish, my anxiety, my worry. I'm giving it to you and I'm just going to trust that everything's going to be okay. And it's similar to what they say about visualizing, believing that it's already yours. And even Mark 11, I think, don't let me get to lying, but somewhere in the book of Mark, I want to say it's 11:24, 11:22, but it says believe that it's already yours and there's some other things like keep knocking, keep seeking that are in the Bible. So it's funny because just the levels of consistency and just believing that you already have God's favor, it's kind of like the same thing, except it's much more completing to me to just know that God has everything under control. And it's not up to me. It's God's will. And if I ask him and I request it, then he's going to give it to me, especially just being a child of God. But I'm learning that, and so that's kind of like how my week went, just anxiety, prayer, and then sort of feeling the connection of this is working, everything's okay. So it's interesting because then this chapter kind of highlights that too in a different way. So my week was good, just figuring those things out, just working through those things one at a time, trusting God. It can be difficult, it can be challenging when you're faced with the world's doings, and there's so much happening in the world right now that it can be disheartening sometimes, but it's just having faith and believing in God and prayer. It has been comforting to know that we have that. So, how was your week?
My week, I'm not even going to lie, it was rough. It was rough, guys. Just I hold myself, I'm really hard on myself, right? Really hard. And it started out rough because I have to remember how God has placed me here, right? And I say that because sometimes we forget how much God has blessed us. And I'm really hard on myself. And this patience thing, this skill, patience, is very difficult to learn. And consistency is another skill. I don't want to I want to say skill because it's not an attribute. It's something that is learned over time. That's what I think a skill is. And anybody can do it. You just have to work at it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I wasn't consistent in waking up and my morning routine. But I have to remember that the place that we are now, I had to ask God from where I used to be. So I had to remember that God is blessing you every day. So be grateful. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it's easier said than done. Because we look up and we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have TikTok, we have Twitter, we have YouTube, and we're seeing everybody live this wonderful life. It's like, I want to be there, but you can be there. Mm-hmm. You just have to be consistent and work at it. You know, so that's where I'm at, and how it started getting better is the more that I started being grateful for where God has me, the more I appreciated everything around me. And the more I started enjoying it. Like, look, okay, whatever. You got next week, you focus on it. It's a wash. It's never a wash. God blessed me with waking up. Mm-hmm. So I have to be grateful that, man, remember when you were living with your parents, car was breaking down. I have a reliable car. I'm married to a beautiful wife. And we're not living with our parents. That's
well, there's a lot more to be grateful for too. Yeah. But yeah, food, I see what you're saying.
Man, we're not worried about. Listen, everybody, gas is high for everybody, but we're not out here. It was a time. It was a time where it was like, we got to make some decisions. All right, we gotta go and eat for a second, and then we gotta figure it out. That happens. I'm telling you, I've been there. I've been there 1,000 times. I gotta put some in the gas tank, but I can just get to work. I've been there. I can't put this in the gas. I gotta eat, but I can just make it to work. Fortunately, there was a gas station right there. I was like, woo! I can just, might be able to push my car. But that's what I'm saying. So going into next week, that's what it is. And I'm starting to learn that the more you put into yourself, the more you'll get out. The more output, you'll be who you want. So if I continue with my morning routine and put God first, and continue to read the Bible with you, the foundation is being built, and everything that I want, once I work on that, it'll come out. But it's about building that foundation. So if you put God first and you put into yourself, work out, be healthy, you connect with your wife, you read the Bible, everything that you prayed for, and you work at it. I'm not saying don't work at it. Everything that you prayed for, you'll get. It's inevitable. If you wake up early, I'm talking about success is relative. If you want to be a chef and own your own restaurant, if you wake up early, have your morning routine, put God first, workout is, you can walk every day. Working out clears your mind. It's scientific, right? If you have God, you put into yourself, you put into your family, then you can pour out, right?
Yeah.
You'll be successful.
In God's timing. Which we learned in Exodus.
And consistency. You're not going to be the best chef. You're not going to be the best podcaster. You're not going to be the best writer. But you have to work on it. And if you want to be, and that's God's will for you, it will happen. But it's going to come with work. Everybody that we've read up to this point in the Bible, and it's early, had to work, and it seemed crazy to the rest of the world. And I'm learning that it's not about the world. It's about you and God. As I read the Bible, I'm learning that more and more. Don't worry about what everybody else got going on, James. You worry about me, you, faith. I got everything else. So that's kind of how my week ended, and that's how I'm going to start my week next week.
So, what I say, in God's timing, because you have the desire in your heart, you might think, oh, I need it now. But what we've learned so far, and especially in Exodus, is that God knows what's going to happen, and He has a plan. So whether you feel like, oh, it needs to already have happened by now or not, it just that part doesn't matter. But if you are sort of impatient, like you were saying, all of us are, some less than others, but if you're impatient like we have been, and we're learning to be more patient, but if you're impatient, then you could possibly block some of your blessings or prolong them. You know what I'm saying? Or suffer the consequences of being disobedient because you thought you could do it yourself. So I think that's an interesting point about just how you have to just trust God. If you think, and this is something that me and James talk about all the time, it's like God would not play these dirty tricks on us and put these dreams in our head and put these things, these goals. It's not like we want, flashy stuff or anything out of the norm. We want the American dream, you know what I mean? We want to be successful in our passions, and we want to have a family and a nice household. We don't want anything crazy, but it's like God wouldn't put that. Even if you do want something that seems weird or out there, I feel like if God gave you that desire, right, that He wouldn't put that in your head if He wasn't going to actually make it so. It's just that you have to be patient and trust His timing and just be as obedient as you can and just seek Him, because that's another thing. Sometimes God doesn't put our desires in our heart. Sometimes, as we saw with this Pharaoh, he hardens people's hearts, and I think that has to do with how close you are to Him. Sometimes even me, and I consider myself to be, I'm definitely seeking God, but sometimes I want things that I know I shouldn't want, or that I know that I shouldn't be thinking about, right? Or I have prideful moments, or I have moments where I'm like, yeah, they need to be told, or things that are not like from God's instruction. So certain things God didn't put in your heart. But if you remain in communication with Him, and you're seeking, and you're just prayerful, and you're trying to be patient, you're trying to be obedient, over time He is going to reveal the desires of your heart. You know what I mean? He's going to make it happen. He's going to make you whole and do His will in you. And He's sometimes just doing a work in you. As we've seen in this, it's like there are times where I completely saw myself in this chapter, like, oh my gosh, I so do that.
I see myself in every body that we've read.
Yeah.
It is a lesson learned with Joseph being patient, not complaining, with Abraham not being patient, with Jacob lying, not being honest, and wrestling with God. That's the big one,
that's a big one.
Wrestling with God. Just you won't give up.
And I definitely see myself in Moses in the way, we're going to get into this, but in the way that he was conversing with God. But there's some things I'm going to touch on later when we go into that part. But I'm having a good time. But it's really insightful too, because I'm like, wow, I do this stuff too. And we like to think it's on a smaller scale, because they were actually seeing the miracles of God happen right in front of them in ways that hadn't been done. So now that these things have been done, I think it's hard sometimes for people to recognize the miracles that happen in our current day. But I definitely see myself in these people in the Bible, and I'm just like in awe, like, oh my gosh, this is a real thing that we do as humans. So anyway,
let's get into
the word. Oh man, this was a good reading week. We had a lot of fun with what we read.
All right, so now this is something that.
Well, let me say this. First, we read Exodus 7 through 18 this week. So we left off by ending out Genesis, and we went to Exodus, from Exodus 1 through 6 last week. Moses introduced to us, and we get to see sort of what his thinking was and what his weaknesses are, or what he perceives his weaknesses to be. We get to see what's happening in Egypt and how that whole thing came about. One of the majorly interesting things to me is how power works and how dictatorship works, and it's also interesting how it is connectable to what is currently happening. And so I think there's a lot to be learned and a lot to be just discussed as far as leadership and how leaders can abuse their power and just throw things awry. So there's just a lot to be learned from what's happening, what happened in the Bible in Exodus, and what's happening now. So what?
Yeah, go ahead. Because let me, not to mean to cut you off, but when you said leadership and dictatorship, that reminds me of what is going on to this day. And I'm not just talking about Russia and Ukraine. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, that's what I was talking about. But,
it's more dictators out there than we know, I think.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to get political here.
No,
we're talking
political.
About the Bible.
We're just talking about
So let's. You want to start with the first question?
Yeah. Okay. So, Aaron's staff becomes a snake. So we already know that Moses' staff became a snake. Mm-hmm. So this is when Aaron talked to Pharaoh.
Aaron is Moses' brother.
Yes, Aaron is Moses' brother. So Moses, when the guy said, I can't do it, he said, okay, let's get Aaron. Aaron's good with words. So him and Aaron went to Pharaoh. And Aaron's staff turned to a snake. Now, Pharaoh has
magicians, sorcerers, whatever they're called,
turned their staffs into snakes as well. Now, this show is about go to the source, read the Bible. I want to make this point. There is dark magic out there that is not of the Lord. There is. Yeah, I said it. Anyway, we gotta be...
Okay, I don't know whether that was a sign from God or...
I don't know. It could have been somebody else.
Okay,
but it's dark magic is out there, and we have to be very careful because Pharaoh did not believe in God. And for his magicians, or I don't know what they called
them sorcerers. And wait, let me go back and look. Exodus 7 through 9.
Exodus 7. Yeah, it was sorcerers. Wise men and sorcerers, yeah. 7:11.
Yeah, sorcerers skilled in witchcraft, and they also, these magicians, soothsayer priests. Yes. That's what they're calling them in the Amplified version.
Yes, they call them magicians or sorcerers. So when we see movies, and I listen, I love movies. I might watch. Yeah, they would tell you.
Yeah.
Right, and I watch crazy stuff. But my movie palette is one day I could be watching a cartoon like Encanto.
That was a good movie.
Or Transylvania to watching Halloween. So I love movies, and I'm gonna write them phenomenal one day. Here's the thing: there in the Bible it says magicians and sorcerers. We have to be very careful. If they're magicians and sorcerers back there are so many now. And sometimes this is what we're saying. This is what we're saying when watch out for the world. Mm-hmm. Because Aaron, God's power, God says, here, I'm showing you my power. Mm-hmm. And Pharaoh has sorcerers say, I can do this as well. We have to be very mindful of that. Guys, we have to be very mindful. The Bible is telling us the devil is real and it's out here, and people will, if God does a miracle, somebody will say, I can do it better, and it's not God.
Right.
So you have to be very mindful
That's
of that.
a great point. That's a great point. As far as, I do want to clear this up.
Yeah.
We watch movies, but that's not to say that movies are real, like the magician and stuff that we see in movies. But I was going to make this point. You can do things with science that look like magic, right? You can do things, you know, what do they do with the dry ice and the magnet, and it's like floating. And I mean, we've seen people with Tai Chi and Qigong do some really interesting things like levitate. And I do believe that, I do believe that it's possible. And I also think that we know scientifically that we're only using a small part of our brain. So I think that we can do things as humans. We can do things that obviously other species can't do, and I think we are more powerful than we think we are. I'm not saying we can go out and do a magic trick or whatever, but I think James's point is valid in that there are things out there that we haven't seen or that we don't really recognize to be available, right? It's like, oh, I don't believe in witchcraft. I don't believe in sorcery. I'm not saying that I practice it, but I believe that there are things out there that I don't understand that could look like, that could be misinterpreted as being from God. You know, I think people can get really crafty and just like I said, you could do things with science that could be mind-blowing or could look like, oh, that's impossible. And even magicians, I like a good magician, like a good magic show. What are those two guys that are the Vegas guys that I used to watch when I was younger? I mean, that stuff is, you know, it can be entertaining, but
like Copperfield.
But there's nothing wrong with a magician at a birthday party if that's what you want to do. But it's like, James is really making the point that there are things, there are forces and just different types of things that people are into that are out there that could be confusing to someone, especially if you're not reading the Bible and aware of God's power, right? Like, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I don't know if we talked about it on the show, if we were just talking about it, but when I used to watch horror movies, I used to wonder, and I still wonder to this day until I saw this one horror movie. I was like, why don't they just pray, right? Like, oh, it looks like it's going to be the end for you or whatever. And then this one movie, this lady did pray, and she didn't get killed. And I was like, see?
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
I was like, see? I told you, you know. But anyway, and that's the thing. It's like, there are different things out there. We could be fearful of them, but if you believe in God and you know that God's power is beyond all power, right? Like, then you know that you're good.
Go ahead.
No, that's all I was going to say, just to touch on your point.
Speaking of God's power, Aaron's snake ate all their snakes.
Right. So when Aaron threw his staff down and it turned into a snake or a serpent, right? Then the other magicians, or the magicians, because Aaron wasn't a magician, but the magicians and sorcerers that Pharaoh had threw their sticks down too, and theirs became snakes. But the thing about their snakes is they got eaten up by Aaron's, right? By Aaron's snake or serpent. So that was interesting. And then we see this sort of thing play out throughout the book. And what happens is God's power is just larger than all other power. So, but the point that was being made, because Pharaoh's heart was hardened, whenever Moses and Aaron would do a miracle, the Pharaoh would be like, oh, we can do that miracle too. You know what I mean? And it's like, actually, no. You can mimic, but you can't produce God's power.
See, the mimic part is the dangerous thing. There are forces out here that don't want you to believe in God's power and who He is and Jesus. They're mimicking and they're not real.
All right, so since we're on this topic, I always wonder what the get is, right? Like, what is the real... I mean, I guess I could see why people could be attracted to having that sort of power.
Yes.
But my thought is, for people even who offer a different way, right? Like, oh, I don't believe in Christianity, or I don't believe in the Bible because of this. To me, it's like, well, what are you promising? So if I'm just like out here shopping religions or shopping whatever people are offering, oh, that's not the truth, this is the truth. Okay, so are you offering salvation? Like, what comes with your package, right? So to me, it's really odd to me. This is me speaking, right? This isn't in the Bible. This is my only thought, right? It's like, what kind of insurance do you provide with that, right? With your truth, or with your, where did you get that from? Who did you read that was so much more compelling than the Bible? And why do you trust those words more than you trust the Bible? It goes back to that thing I be saying sometimes about, we'll believe the dictionary or Wikipedia or the internet or the encyclopedia or our friend that we knew from back in the day before we'll read and understand and believe in the Bible. That doesn't make any sense, right? You gotta take a beat and be like, why do I believe this? What makes this more believable than the Bible, or than what, you kind of gotta feel like, what does the truth feel like?
Yeah.
And then you have to assess for yourself, like, am I believing this because it's convenient and I don't have to sacrifice anything and I don't have to be disciplined? Is it a convenient truth, or is it that it actually makes sense? So those are things that I have to, that I have struggled with in the past, just trying to figure out for myself what to believe in my youth, so these are things that are interesting. I mean, this is what the show is about. I was thinking about, I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but I don't care about ruffling any feathers. This is what we talk about. And we're not saying that this is the end all be all. We welcome you to join the conversation. Please answer these questions below and ask some questions. What do you think about belief in the Bible and just different sources? And what do you think? Do you think dark magic exists? Do you think there's sorcerers? I mean, it says in the Bible, so I believe it. But what do you think, and what has been your experience with that? I took us off on a tangent a little bit with that sorcery stuff. But look, it's in the Bible, and we want to have conversations with you guys about what's in the Bible, about what your beliefs are, about what you think, and bring your information to the table. We're not challenging anyone. We really just want to have this open conversation, and nobody's gonna be berating you or anything like that. Please send your comments, send your questions. Let's discuss it. Like, this is where we are, right? We're all on this earth together. We might as well talk to each other.
And I want to say this, and we're gonna move on. Listen, my family's from the South. I was born in Sumter, South Carolina. I was raised in, I was military back then. I was raised in New Carrollton, right, PG County. My dad always says this, and if you're from the South, you know this. The roots is real. I read it in the Bible. Y'all keep playing.
Oh my God! So it did not say the root is real in the Bible. Just some full transparency and clarity on that.
It says,
talk about the root. Get out of here with this. Are you talking about Exodus? We're at Exodus 7:11, which is really funny because those are two of my favorite numbers.
Anyway, all right. Let's move on. Let's move on.
All right. Let's answer the question. So, first we have to explain what the question is.
Right. So we gotta do the plagues 1 through 7. So and then we're gonna get to the question because the question has to do with the plagues.
Gotcha.
Boom. So God tells Moses, go to Pharaoh, you and Aaron. I want my people free. I promised. I made this promise.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's time. I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart, and you're going to show him my power. He's not going to believe you. And I'm going to do 10 plagues on Egypt. So I'm going to go down the first 7, and then we're going to ask the question. Plague number 1, blood. The Nile River was filled with blood.
And it smelled foul, and the people didn't have water. Oh, I could just imagine. River, you think in Egypt is hot, and then there's a river full of blood, and the fish died.
Yep, and the Bible said stink. So
it did. The Bible said steak. STANK.
Yeah.
The Bible actually said the word steak. And I mean, I could just imagine in that heat with the blood, a river of blood. That was just wild. Okay, but
and
it happened.
Second one, frogs. So many frogs that they were in people's houses.
They were in people's beds.
You wake up as frogs. You just see frogs around. And frogs are all slimy.
Yeah, and so of those two, Pharaoh's magicians were able to duplicate the miracle,
Yep.
right? And so even with the serpent we talked about, and then they did the blood thing. The Pharaoh's magicians duplicated that miracle
Yep.
with their secret arts. And then when the frogs happened, Pharaoh's magicians duplicated the miracle by sorcery.
Yep.
So Pharaoh's basically making this like
That
weird point that like, we can do this
we
too.
can do the same thing. Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay. Lice. From all the dust, the lice covered all the animals and the people. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Flies. This is bad.
Wait, let me say something about the lice.
Go ahead, yes.
The magicians are unable to duplicate this. They
Yes.
said, "Oh, this is the finger of God."
Yes.
So sorry, we can't do
We
that.
can't do that.
Because he turned the dust.
He turned dust. He went like
into
this,
lice.
and it was, which is
Right.
only God power. Flies. Now this was, they were mixed insects. This is when it sucked all the blood.
No, that was the other insects. That was, I think, or was it?
That was the swarms. So remember, it was the swarms of flies.
Oh,
it
I
was
thought.
a mixture
Okay.
of insects that swarmed everywhere, and they.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
which one was that?
This one, yeah.
Exodus 8:20.
Yeah.
8:20 through
It
32.
was
Okay, yeah. So in 16 it says,
Yeah.
stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the ground, and will become biting gnats, lice throughout the land of Egypt. So they were biting.
Yeah.
But that, I think the locusts were the one that were blood sucking.
Yeah.
The flies were just biting.
Yeah, the flies were just biting.
Can you imagine flies everywhere biting?
They're just biting.
Ugh.
Yes. Then, where we at? Cattle. The livestock just died.
He just had all of the Egyptians' livestock die,
Yeah.
but none of the Israelites' livestock died.
Nope. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And all of this
5,
stuff,
6.
well, not all of this stuff, but a lot of this stuff, it says like the Israelites were good.
Yep.
So this was only happening to the Egyptians. So you got to think they're pretty close in proximity, I would think, if they're the slaves, right?
They're seeing what's happening.
They're in the same area, but it's like the frogs and the flies and the things like that. I don't know about the frogs, whether the frogs came in everybody's house, but I know as soon as we get further down, these things were not happening to the Israelites.
Yes.
I want to say none of this was happening, but I don't know that really for sure because I got to go back and look. But I think it was obvious, and this speaks to the larger point, and I'm sorry, I'm going to let you finish, but this speaks to the larger point that this is proof that God is making this happen. And we'll get to that later when we talk about Pharaoh, but go ahead. Sorry.
Then boils. So he made boils
break out on everyone's skin.
Everybody's skin.
In Egypt.
In Egypt.
And the magicians couldn't respond to that because they were struck with boils as well. So you got to think, I guess, the same kind of boils that we read about in Job.
Yeah.
It's just boils on your skin. And all of these times, let me just point this out. All of these times, Pharaoh is saying, go to your God. He's telling Moses, please go to your God and plead with him. Pray for me and tell him to remove this plague. And then I'll let the people go. And then every single time, he comes back and reverses it and says, so God lets the thing come away, whatever the plague is, and then Moses is like, no, I won't let them go.
Yes. Hail. Now, the hailstorms, it wasn't just hail. It was kind of, and it's not fire and brimstone, but it was lightning and fire coming down on the Egyptians. So, the question is, which plague so far would you least like to experience in your area right now?
Out of 1 through 7.
1 through 7.
Because I was going to say the last one.
1 through 7.
But okay, so probably, oh man. I don't like biting flies, but boils are worse. At least with biting flies, you can put on a sweater or something, but boils are probably the worst thing I could think of. I mean, I wouldn't want none of this stuff to happen. I want to be able to drink water.
Boils?
I would say boils.
This is tough because it's bad ones. Blood's not cool.
None of it's cool.
No water, you can't take a shower.
They didn't have showers.
I would probably,
I don't know.
Well, in this area this time.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Present day.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing.
Matter,
boils.
yeah.
Boils. Final answer. For me.
I'm gonna have to go boils too, because I don't know where. First of all, boils are very excruciating. I've never had one, but like I've seen it on the internet, and they hurt. So it's like all the other things I can get over, right? The not the lice or the flies. The cattle. I mean, that would suck.
All of it is bad.
Yeah, I would think the cattle would say like we can't get no food from the grocery store because it's all bad. You go to the grocery store and all the things are rotten. Fish is rotten, chicken is rotten.
Oh,
that's what
sounds like one of the places around here. But anyway,
that's what. Oh man, that's what I would think that. That's what I would think that when they say cattle bring up. But boils, I wouldn't want boils.
I gotta go. I mean, let me just explain because I want you to explain too. I feel like boils is everything else is outside of your skin. Even hail, you can take cover from hail. Yeah. The frogs would blow me, but as far as like everything else, you could take cover from or get around. Yeah. Okay, even with water and food. You wouldn't have any water or food, but you could still survive. There are certain things. It didn't say they didn't have anything to drink. Maybe they were drinking milk. Maybe they were drinking.
I would assume.
Maybe they had fruit where you could get, if you have a pineapple or a coconut. I don't think they have coconuts in Egypt, but even if you have fruit, you can get some sort of liquid and sustenance. Yep. And even if there aren't any cattle, there are other things you can eat. And even if there's nothing to eat or drink, you can still survive for a limited amount of time, right? But and with hail, you can take cover. With flies, you can cover your skin. With boils, there's just no getting away from it. And it says horrible boils. Yeah. You know, it's not like they're mild. It's not like a little mosquito bite. It's a boil. I don't even know what that feels like either, but it just don't sound good. And it's on your skin. Yeah. Oh, I just don't want that.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it because just like all the things you said, and then I remember Job. And he had boils. And you got to think, when stuff is on you, it hurts your confidence. Everybody is vain. They look in the mirror and you want to look good and celebrate yourself. You do. People don't look in the mirror and say, oh, I'm ugly today. They do, but what I'm saying is people take pride in their appearance.
Yeah.
Having a boil on your skin, it's not, I would be... Like that, people get mad at pimples and scars and moles. Can you imagine this? Boils. And I just think that when Job said it hurt his skin and his confidence, that's what I would think like. The magicians couldn't even show up. They was like, I can't leave the house.
Yeah, because it's
All right, so we went with boils. All right, plagues 7 through 10. Passover tradition. Exodus begins, and the Passover rules.
So then after the hailstorms killed the animals and the people who are left unprotected outside, and they strip or destroy almost every plant. At that point, Pharaoh admits his sin, but he still didn't let them go. And then the next thing was locusts. Now the next thing was locusts. The locusts were the ones, if I'm not mistaken, that were blood-sucking. Yeah. And maybe not. Anyway, so the locusts came and they ate everything that the hail left. So anything that the hail didn't destroy, the locusts came and took care of. So now you really have no food, right? They came and ate all the food. And so then there's darkness. Oh, this one was wild too. So darkness covered everything. They couldn't even see each other in Egypt. But somehow there was supernatural light in the Isrealites' home, right? The Israelites had supernatural light, but darkness was upon the Egyptians. That seems really scary, right? Yeah. Just to be in the darkness.
When we're talking about darkness, guys, there's no sun, no moon, no stars. It's pitch black.
Yeah.
If you've ever been in pitch black, you cannot see. Your eyes never adapt.
That's scary.
Pitch black is not cool. There's no light.
And then the last one, this is the one that I would hate I would not. This is the worst one. I'll take the boils, right, over this. The death of the firstborn. The death of the firstborn of all the people and all the cattle of Egypt. But Israel is spared, and they had a specific way of doing it with the Passover. But the firstborn people, and the way the Bible described it, was like there was a death in every home. I just thought that was awful, that's right? Crazy. I mean, and at this point, and I can't remember exactly when, but at this point, the Egyptians are telling Pharaoh, "What are you doing here? Would you please just let them go? Look at what's happening to us." Because Pharaoh kept turning around and saying, "No, help me. Tell your God to help me." And then Moses would go and pray to God, and then when God would take away the plague, whatever it was at the time, Pharaoh would come back on his word and say, "No, I won't let them go," right? Because he was promising, "Please tell God to help me." And then when Moses and would go and pray to God and say, "Please help Pharaoh," Pharaoh would then come back and not do what he said he was going to do. But this was the time when they lost his firstborn, because he lost his firstborn, that he said, "Okay, just go. Get out of here. Right? Take your people and go."
Yeah, and he said take everything. So the question is, put yourself in Pharaoh's shoes. He's visualizing the loss of his slave labor. What else do you think went through his mind?
Pride. Okay, so if Pharaoh is like not willing to let the slaves go, I'm thinking, man, I have so many. I don't want to judge this guy, but I have so many thoughts. I think that Pharaoh might have been thinking, we're making good on the slave thing, right? We're getting everything we need. We don't have to lift a finger. We could just tell them to do it. And then I don't know if they were making money off of it like the Americans did, but also just this sense of pride in thinking that you have power, right? Like, ain't nobody gonna tell me what to do, right? Like, that's your God. I'm thinking that's probably what he was thinking. And then we all kind of suffer from this thing sometimes where we're thinking like, this life is the only thing that's valuable, right? So you're thinking like, I've made it on earth. That means this is it. Like, and it's not. So if you're not obeying God, there's an afterlife that, you know what I'm saying, that you're gonna have to be held accountable for your life. So it's like, I think a lot of people get caught up in the idea that they're just gonna do what they want to do here because they can, because they have free will, and that it's more comfortable and more convenient for them to do whatever they want to do as opposed to doing what God tells them to do. Because at some point, and you brought this up earlier, but I have to say this. When people differentiate between, like when the Egyptians are saying, your God, tell your God this, or ask your God that, they are acknowledging that he exists. Whether they're serving him or not is the thing that's in question. But they know that there's a God. The sorcerers even said, this is the finger of God. We can't replicate that, right? So we can't do that even with our magic and sorcery. So that's the finger of God. So this is where it ends, right? They know that there's a God. They just don't want to acknowledge him and worship him and obey him. But they know there's a God. So I think it's risky, very much so, to be on this earth thinking that this is the end all be all and you're just going to use whatever power you have to get what you want in the now. But even in this story, he's being punished and it's being seen, right? I think that's the whole point of this, is that God even knew. He told he told Moses and Aaron, he's not going to go for it, but do what I say, right? He's not going to do it. His heart is hardened and I'm going to harden it. But it's an example. I think that was the whole point, is, people will witness it and live to tell about it and be able to know that we're for sure that this was God doing this. So put yourself in Pharaoh's shoes, right? He's visualizing the loss of his slave labor. What else do you think went through his mind?
A lot. I think pride, you said, his ego.
Break that out for me.
Okay. Shout out to Jonas. So, his pride is what he's built.
Mm.
You got to remember, this is the legacy of Egypt that is falling before his eyes.
Mm.
This is 400 years, I think they were slaves.
Yeah, 430 years the Israelites were slaves.
So this is not just ending with him. This is the fall of that Egypt, I'm not saying.
Right, yeah, I get it.
It's the fall of everything that not only he built, but people before him.
Okay. Well, his
legacy.
watch.
His legacy.
Okay. All right.
His ego is looking in the future. How big can we get because we have this? We're huge now, but now, how big can we get? That's gone. So his pride is gone. His ego is gone. His future is gone. His firstborn is gone. There's no future now. The past is gone. So he's going through it. He's like, I think that, once again, he's so angry. He's lost everything. And I think that he's just like, I've lost everything.
So do you think it's like a Scarface thing where he's just going to go out shooting?
Yes. I would too.
Oh my gosh, no you wouldn't. When it comes against God?
No, you got to understand that I'm in Pharaoh's shoes. I don't even believe
Okay, right. Okay, I understand.
I'm so
You're talking
angry.
from Pharaoh's viewpoint.
Yes. I would.
Okay. I was like, what? Who are you?
No,
okay.
Think about it. I would too. I'm saying this from Pharaoh's perspective.
Yeah. Put yourself in Pharaoh's shoes. That's the question.
I'm angry. This isn't my God. Everything that I've built is my ancestors. My father's built is gone. My son is gone, who I wanted to continue to build what I've built. My land is destroyed. My people are dead. My livestock is gone. What else do I have to lose by killing them? He's so angry. He doesn't see what's going on.
He's like, I won't let them go.
He doesn't even believe. After all that happened, he's like, no, I'm going to kill them anyway.
Well, did he want to kill them or did he want to capture them again? I don't know.
Well, I
think didn't happen.
Kill them. Yeah.
So okay, let's move along.
No, so the Passover tradition starts, and we were trying to figure out last night.
So I learned a lot about Passover. I didn't know anything about it.
Me neither. Yeah. So it starts in March. This is when it started, right after the Israelites left Egypt. And also, it was saying in there where it's a tradition they have with the firstborn to remind them that God spared them out of Egypt.
Right.
So the Passover tradition it's like a feast. It's a celebration in my mind that
they eat unleavened bread.
Yeah, they eat unleavened bread. They have a big feast. Some days I think for 7 days they can't have leavened bread in their house. So it's a big tradition, and I think it's still celebrated today.
Yeah.
In the Jewish culture. Yeah, I think it's celebrated today in the Jewish culture. I think it's huge, and it's just cool to know just the history behind it.
It is very cool.
Yeah. So then Exodus begins, even though the chapter is named Exodus. It's where it begins. I think the traditions of the Israelites start to begin. Passover is created. The Sabbath is created. It's just a lot of things that you hear nowadays and see on calendars.
Yeah.
This is where this comes from, right? So that's cool. And then, of course, it has, like everything else, God has rules. He has rules that come with it, which I understand. I mean, if you have to have rules. I mean, you can't just. You can go in life without rules.
I don't know. I feel like rules are meant for order.
Yeah.
Right? If we don't have rules, then people just do whatever they want, and then they lose sight of what the purpose is.
Even if when I say rules, I mean you govern. Say you govern yourself you would have rules for how you want to live.
Mm-hmm. Some structure, some order.
Structure. You're not gonna just get up and you be like, you're gonna get up and cook. You're gonna get up and shower or bathe. Even if you don't, you're gonna have to eat. You're gonna have to.
Yeah,
You have to. There's no way around. You're gonna go for a walk. There's no way to be like. Now some people do. I mean,
there's consequences though.
Yeah.
So this is a great point that you bring up, because this doesn't have anything to do with the Bible, as far as I know. The movie Castaway, right? You think of living off the grid, right? Mm-hmm. Here's somebody who survived a plane crash. I don't even know how he got there, but he comes onto this island and he has to do everything from scratch. He has to survive. So through trial and error, he learns what's going to work and what's not. I don't know if there was any animals on the island. I was worried about that when I was watching it, but I was thinking to myself, he had to learn everything on how to survive. He had to make his own shoes. He had to make his own clothes. I'm sure he couldn't just be laying out in the sun. He had to figure out what he was going to drink, what he was going to eat. Mm-hmm. And
fire.
You find that these are the things that govern you, just survival. Because you can't just do things on a whim or not have a plan, because there's consequences to that. Now, had there been animals on that island, he would have had to develop an even more, succinct set of rules. Yeah. Because, and then if there had been maybe two of them and they were procreating on the island, they would have to pass those rules on, because this is the way we survive, this is the way we live, and then that's how traditions are made, right? And then with Passover, this was God's instruction, so this is how this came to be. But I think without rules, there's consequences. Yep. There's consequences to living without order, without a state of order or structure.
I totally agree. Now, here we go. So, we have God's guiding pillars, crossing the Red Sea.
That was my favorite part.
The Song of Celebration. And
the water turned drinkable.
The water turned drinkable. Right. So, now we got God's guiding pillars. Now God starts to, we just said this, he starts setting rules. Mm-hmm. Right? They're out of Egypt. Now, Pharaoh's mad. And he gets chariots to go after them. Now, listen to this. This is a very important lesson that I'm still learning to this day. Because this happened twice. The people of the Israelites that were just released from slavery, that just saw all this God's power, started complaining. They saw the chariots of Pharaoh, and they said, we need to go back to Egypt. Why did you bring us out to die? And it made me think, how many times do I complain? I remember how my week went. Mm-hmm. I started out complaining, and then I realized, what am I complaining about? He just released the Israelites from slavery, and they're complaining. And he's like, yo, did you just see what I did? I have fire and hail and frogs and lice. I turned the Nile into blood. So, once again, as much as we complain, God still delivers. This is God's love. Mm-hmm. Still delivers. God knew that Pharaoh wasn't going to let their people go after a certain point. He still stopped it. All right. So, to be honest with you,
who still stopped it? I didn't get
God still stopped the plagues.
Oh, yeah. I get it.
That's what I'm saying. God still loved. I believe that even...
So you're saying, just to make a complete statement, you're saying God knew that Pharaoh's heart was hardened and he wasn't going to let them go willingly, and probably until the last one he knew, right? But then he still stopped the plagues as he requested.
Yeah. Still stop. He didn't have to.
No.
He could have had all the plagues going on
at once.
I'm going to start this. Oh, then I'm going to drop another one.
No,
I'm going to drop another one. I'm going to drop. He could have had all the plagues.
He could have been like DJ Khaled.
Yeah.
Another one.
Like, for real, but God stopped it. And this is what I'm saying. My whole point in totality is we are complaining about where God has us at, and we don't remember where God brought us to be where we were at.
He brought us out of Egypt.
Come on, man. He brought the Israelites out of slavery. He's brought me from a point to where I'm at now, and me and my wife, Faith. Man, y'all don't listen, struggle is real. We used to struggle. Now we're here.
Right, and it's not like we've made it, but we're so much better off. Now, let me say this, because to your point, now we're going to start to see them complain.
Yeah.
But in this point, when they first said that complaint about, why did you bring us out in the wilderness to die here? Yeah. Were there no graves in Egypt or something like that?
Yeah.
The thing is, they looked up and saw the chariots, like you said, as Pharaoh's approached.
Yeah, Pharaoh's pissed.
And they were scared.
Yeah.
And they cried out to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
That's important, because here's what Moses said. Do not be afraid. Take your stand. Be firm and confident and undismayed. And see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today.
Yes.
Right? So it's this thing where, and I see what you're saying about the complaints. We're going to get into that even more so. Mm-hmm. In this particular moment, though, what I took away was, even though God has promised that that this is the God that I am, that I can read and I can see what kind of God he is, and I can see that he keeps his promises, and I can look back in my own life and see how God has brought me, there are still these weird moments when I'm standing there afraid, like, oh God, is this going to work out for me? Like, what? What is that anxiety? What is that fear? And I can only imagine it's just God proving again, right? This is who I am, right? Go through this. Watch this. You know what I'm saying? I'm still going to be here, right? It's, you know how people used to do that thing when we were in school where they would buck at you or whatever to see if you would wince. It's like these things are happening in our lives. This, okay, now this happens. Okay, now this happens. And are you still going to be faithful to God? And so we see here that they're afraid. And this is what I'm saying. Even though I'm reading this and even though I know some of this stuff, it's still that human thing where I do get afraid. I do worry. I am anxious at times, but it's really just a human thing. And I wish I could be better about, just like what Moses said, do not be afraid. Take your stand and be firm and confident. I'm learning more about how to do that, but it's still challenging.
I think it's going to be challenging forever, but I think the more that we read, the more that we have confidence, and the more that we build our confidence, the more we read, the more we learn, the more we trust God, it's never going to go away. The negative thoughts are never going to go away. I just think the way that we handle and control them. So if you have a negative thought, you know that now that's part of anxiety, which doesn't exist because God got you. But that takes time of reading it, reading the Bible, and praying and connecting with him more. Then the thoughts start going away. And then some people are just great. Like Joseph. I mean, that's just an anomaly. I'm going to be honest. I mean, he was like, I'm in jail. God got me. That's a rare. That is
rare, right? I mean, look, I strive to be that thinking like that.
Even Job complained. Joseph did not. That's rare. That's.
Yeah.
I know he's a man. I'm just saying, after all he's went through, got sold into slavery, you know.
All that stuff, people lied on him, his brothers. Lied on him. All that stuff.
I'm just being me, man.
Yeah, God got me.
God got me.
I'm gonna be more like that though. Yeah. Okay, so what is the question? All right,
the question is, here it is, right? Moses had to pray at the sea all night before God parted the water. What has made you pray continuously?
That is a personal thing. Okay, so I can say it. Do you want to go first though? Because I always go first.
Yes.
Go ahead.
What has made me pray continuously? Uh, I could talk about.
I have a few examples.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick one.
I'm gonna pick one that's easy one, not to get too personal. I've prayed, man, not to get too personal. I've prayed about my situation at work,
Mm-hmm.
and man, I remember we were. Listen, all right. Mom
You were in a much worse off
Your
position.
mom made the show. We were at your mom's house all the time, and we were just in a position of, man, I think we prayed a lot. We were going to your church and my church.
Man, we was double churching.
We were double churching, and we were praying. I was praying, and I remember you were like, "We're gonna be, in such and such, and we're gonna have our own jobs," and it came to fruition. But at the time, I prayed. Now I pray for different stuff now.
Yeah.
I pray continuously. I'm starting to pray for being grateful, thanking God for everything He's given me, and I'm learning this, guys, and I continuously say this. I'm trying to pray continuously, having a conversation with God. So I'm trying to continuously not only pray and say I'm grateful, but I'm trying to pray for all my faults to help me get better, right? Trying to repent. And I'm just trying to have a conversation with God, because I don't want it to always be, God, I need, when He's not just here for that. He's here to just talk to sometimes too, guys. He's here not only to give you what you need, but He's here to comfort you. He's just sit in silence. That's what I'm trying to develop, a relationship. It's not, I mean, can you imagine if you had a friend that always came to you, and every time you talked to them, they needed something?
Well,
every time you say, I need. Well, I understand that that's where we're supposed to go to God, right? But I'm trying to pray continuously to be grateful for everything that He's given me.
Yeah, I understand that.
And repent for just trying to constantly repent, because we sin every day, and talk to Him about, I'm not going in there and saying, God, this day was crazy, but I'm just trying to not necessarily talk about what I need in life, but I'm trying to talk about not what did I need, but how can I get better. It's a difference, I think. Me needing, I just need this, I need a new car, I need a job, I need a new house. No, let's pray for, God, I'm struggling with anxiety.
So
that's right, but that's, so I guess I'm going down need or want. But when I'm praying about struggling with anxiety, or good Lord, I can't think like that, I gotta love everybody, this I'm praying for, that's building a relationship with Lord, I think, because I'm being totally honest and transparent. Now He knows what I'm thinking, but by me being honest and transparent, that's what I'm trying to do continuously, and I think that builds a better relationship with the Lord. If it makes sense, guys.
Yeah, it makes sense. I do want to touch on a couple things, because I feel exactly what you're saying. It's so interesting. Probably because we talk all the time, so I know.
Yeah,
but
God, I need.
Here's the thing, though. So I have a slightly different take on that. I think that is the purpose. You don't want to just be constantly making requests and not. One of the things that we pray sometimes, or I know that I pray, but I think I've definitely prayed this together with you before. It's just like, God, which is it's one of those blessed and highly favored things that you say, which is like, use me, Lord, right? Yeah. Use me to do your will. I'm a faithful servant.
It's having a conversation.
That's having a conversation. I wanted to touch on what you said because when we go back to Moses and how he pleaded with God and said, I don't know if I'm the one, and God let him know that, oh no, you're the one, right? I think that's something that comes out of having a relationship with God, because you wouldn't be so bold as to believe that you could do something yourself, right? So a lot of times when we have these big dreams, it's God putting that desire in our heart, and it seems so impossible, but it is impossible for you, right? It's not impossible for God. You actually need God in order to make that thing happen. And if you are thinking of it and you're obsessed with it and it's your dream and it's your desire and you just, oh man, I can't stop thinking about it. It's got to be, right? And you just know that it's bigger than you and there's no way that you have the power to make this happen yourself. That's probably, and you're praying, it's probably a good indication that God is going to help you with that. You know, he's going to lead you through. He's going to tell you exactly what to say. He's going to tell you exactly where to go, exactly where to be, exactly what to do, you know, and you just have to be in step with him.
You made a good point. And when you were like, when Moses prayed to God and was like, I can't do this, he was like, I will. That's the conversation I was talking about.
Yeah, I mean, and I get you. So I sometimes when I go back and I say I want to clarify a point, it's because James and I speak the secret marriage language, and so we kind of understand each other's thoughts, which is really funny because sometimes James will be like, hey, you know about the whatchamacallit? What is the thing? And I'll be like, oh, the code or whatever he's saying. Somehow I just know what he's talking about. There are other times I have no idea what he's talking about. But most of the time it's, hey, what's the thing, right? What's the name? And I'll be like, oh, it's this, right? And it's just somebody walking past will be like, what are they even saying? But so I understand what he's saying. So sometimes I'm aware of that while we're filming, and I'll say, just to clarify. So that's, I understood that. So when you talk about, and that's why I said this is personal, I'm going to just put myself out there and be so honest. What has made me pray continuously? Anxiety.
Yeah, that's real.
It's so real. And recently, it's kind of come to me in a different way. So before, I would pray to God to take my anxiety away so I could just perform my daily functions and not go through the day just kind of having a bad day, so that I can enjoy the wonderful day that he's made, right? I would pray to God, please take away my anxiety, please take away my anxiety. And sometimes he does. Most of the time he does. I mean, most of the time it leads me to a scripture that I end up writing out of my memory verse book, or it leads me to a gospel song, or just it leads me to prayer. And then I realize that why would he take my anxiety away if this is what it makes me do, right? So I'm like, maybe anxiety is an actual gift. Another thing that I think about anxiety is that it's been said, and I don't know if it's scientific or whatever, but a few of the ways to get rid of anxiety are the things that I want to be doing, like working out, meditating, praying, and doing. One of the major things that takes away anxiety is taking action. So if you're anxious about, let's say I'm anxious because the laundry's not done, right? And that's a real thing for me. Oh my God, there's so much laundry, it's making me anxious. It's like, once I get that first load in, I feel better. It's not all done yet. It's definitely not folded and put it away, right? And there's still 4 or 5 more loads to go. But once I put that first load of laundry in the washing machine, I know that I'm on the way, right? This is just a simple example. But when you talk about anxiety, I realize that it causes me to take action. So in a lot of ways, I feel like it's a misconstrued gift. So in my mind, I've always been asking him to take it away, but now more recently, I'm recognizing that, well, wait a minute, what would be God's purpose in taking the anxiety away? To comfort me? He can do that other ways, right? He can do that through causing me to take action. So you think about what I just said, right? God, please take my anxiety away. Well, for what, right? Because if you don't take my anxiety away, what am I going to do? I'm going to pray. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to try some of this working out stuff. I'm going to do some work. I'm going to be like, I'm so anxious about XYZ. I need to hurry up and do something, right? And I'm going to seek God. At the end of the day, it's like I'm going to stay in prayer. I'm going to stay lockstep. Like, I still have this anxiety and it won't go away. God, please walk with me. And that's what he wants. So why would he take it away? So I'm starting to think of anxiety in a different way, where it's like, not my friend, but it's a roll dog. Like, oh, hey, anxiety, it's you again. Well, let's get in the car. We have things to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Let's come along for the ride.
Yeah.
Hi, anxiety. I think of them. I think I told you this before. Anxiety, fear, and doubt. I think of them sometimes. This is gonna make me sound weird, but anxiety, fear, and doubt. They're like these old friends that I can't shake, and if they're going to be here, then they're going to be here, but they're not going to drive, right? We're all going to get in the car together and we're going to do this day, but they're not going to control where we're going. They're just going to be there, and I'm not going to allow them to distract me too much. You know what I'm saying? They're just going to be there, and so what, right? So anyway, that's what I pray the most about, most continuously, anxiety.
It is real, and it's same with fear. You know? All right. So, now, before we move on, shout out to you, because we were just talking about this earlier, and I think the verse was 1 Peter.
Oh, yeah. 1 Peter 5:7. Oh, 5:6 and 5:7. 1 Peter 5:6 and 5:7. Yeah. Oh, man. That's my job right there.
You got to throw 8 in there.
Yeah, gotta throw 8 in there too.
Yeah,
look it up, guys.
Look it up. It's a real cool verse. It's cool.
And I would read it right now, but I'd rather you just go look it up. That's all right. That's some homework for you guys. Yeah. Go look up 1 Peter 5:6 and 5:7. In fact, it's not a long book. No. Just go. I mean, it's not a long chapter. You might as well just go ahead and read the chapter. Yeah. Go to 1 Peter chapter 5. You're going to have to read 1 through 6 to understand what 6 and 7 and 8 means. But it's not a tough read. It's an easy read. And when you get to 5:6 and 5:7 and 5:8, like James said, you tell me that thing does not make so much sense, and it comforts me.
Yep.
I write that verse out sometimes, quite often actually, now that I look back, because that wasn't even the first time. And when I'm writing it out, it just brings me comfort. It just makes me remember, like, yeah, this is right. So yeah, go look that up. Okay, sorry.
All right. So Moses prays. He parts the Red Sea. Everybody sees this in movies. Everybody talks about it. Now, people don't talk about this, which I think is important. Pharaoh was really close to them, but God used the angel to kind of...
It said confuse them.
Confuse Pharaoh. So he wouldn't take over the Israelites. Mm-hmm. And then they, while Moses parted the Red Sea, the Israelites walked through it. And it says that it was dirt, and then he parted the sea, so it was a wall.
It was a wall of walls of water, yeah. and they walked on dry land in between the waters.
Yep, and they walked on dry land. And then by the time Pharaoh saw them and he tried to catch up, the Red Sea closed and
they were drowned.
So now, once again, God is working. They're in the wilderness. You get food from heaven, water from a rock. The Hebrews, they have their first war. Mm-hmm. And Moses' father-in-law. All right, so now the people are in wilderness, and they are once again they're complaining, and this happens. Let me tell you something. I do this so much,
guys.
During the day.
Guys,
I'm at work. I wake up. I stubbed my toe. I knocked over some coffee this morning. And I had to pray. I was like, because you complain, you talk to yourself negatively, and then you complain to God. And God's like, here you go, guys. They're like, we want to go back. We want to go back and be slaves. He's like, wait, what? I just brought you out. You just saw my power. So he said, okay, Moses, I got you. Food comes from heaven now. Heaven. They wake up, it's bread.
Yeah, they described it as bread on the land. It was like wafers.
Like, it's
that was
crazy.
A whole interesting miracle to me because
and people had so much food, you could take however much you want, but after a certain time at night, it goes bad. So you
except on Sabbath, which is another one of God's miracles. Right? Go ahead.
So you can't just be out there eating all night. Take in what you
need.
Know, don't be. I don't. This is not in the Bible. Just don't be greedy. You know, don't be gluttonous. Don't. Just take enough.
Take what you need.
Take what you need. Eat. Now, water from the rock. They were thirsty. We have nothing to drink. Moses prayed to God. Struck the rock. Drinkable water comes out. God blessed them again after the complaining. Now we're starting to get into how Israel is starting to grow now as a nation, because they're gone from the Egyptians. The Egyptians aren't chasing them no more. They have their first war.
Yeah.
With the, you could say it, I don't.
What? Oh.
I struggle with this one. Hold on.
Amalekites.
Amalekites.
I think it says Amalekites, but I don't know.
I'm going with Amalekites. It sounds, well, I say other things. I talk crazy, guys. So, Amalekites, they have the war.
Mekahai.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's going to say, people
okay,
be killing me.
So weird.
Right?
Where does that come from?
I don't know.
It was some movie we saw when we were kids. It had to be. Anyway, we'll figure it out later.
I will, because I
don't know where that came from.
So Moses is on the mountain every time his hands. So he sends Joshua, and every time Moses' hands drop, the Israelites lose. So his hands has to stay raised, and then the Israelites won. Right, and Aaron and they had to hold Moses' hands. He's sitting on top of the mountain. And then Moses' father-in-law visits, and I mean it's an interesting thing because his father-in-law visits, brings his wife and Moses' wife and Moses' 2 kids, and they catch up and they talk, and his father-in-law was like, "You're doing things the wrong way. You should bring all the requests to God. You should only handle the huge requests." So this is a big thing, and it still is, to be honest, where you have a community, you have an elderman who's faithful to God. Job was the same way, where he judged, right?
Right. He settled the disputes of the land or whatever.
To the land. So he just was like, okay. He basically was they call him now arbitrator. A third party. Like, he doesn't take a side. He looks at both sides fair, and he says, okay, you do this and you do this, and it's settled. Like a judge, like a courtroom, right? But it's non-biased, let's just say that. So it's non-biased, right? So
yeah, I get it.
So, and then his father-in-law, I think, basically was like, hey, you're doing a lot, and it's wearing you down. So maybe you don't deal with all the requests,
right? Because he was out there all day.
All day, he was like, why don't you just handle the huge one?
Right, set up a hierarchy.
A hierarchy, and then his father-in-law leaves. So that was it. Here it is. Here's a question. The people thought God would let them die in the wilderness. Have you ever felt a lack of faith? What happened?
I mean, of course, we all feel that sometimes. And it's not a lack of faith in God. It's a lack, well, I guess it is a lack of faith in God when it comes down to it. But it's normally a lack of faith in myself. Okay, so first of all, I got to go back and say this. The people thought God would let them die in the wilderness.
Multiple times.
I have to say, like,
times.
even though I'm sitting here reading this, judging them, it's only because I'm seeing the story in one sort of reading or whatever. So as I'm reading it, I can see that they're being weird. I can see that they're making the wrong decisions, but I can't see that for myself. So every time they complain and they're like, why did you bring us out of slavery to make us out here? And they're talking to Moses. At one point, Moses thought he was going to get stoned by them. And he asked God. And God said to Moses, how long do you people refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions? Mm-hmm. So, and then Moses said to them, right, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you tempt the Lord and try his patience? Because they're sitting here complaining. They keep talking about, why did you bring us out of slavery? So there's a couple things I didn't understand about that. I just want to say that now, and then I'll answer the question. Mm-hmm. So I didn't understand why they would say that, because the land wasn't good anymore as far as I could tell. There was hail, there was locusts, there was blood in the Nile. I know he took all the stuff back, but it's just, why would you want to be there in slavery? What is that doing for you? So I didn't get that part, and I didn't understand why they were still in the wilderness. I'm sure that'll come more clear to me as we read along. But I was like, if Jethro came and visited them, obviously there's a path out of there. What are they doing? So I don't know what's going to happen, but I did want to say that, because here's why I wanted to say it. Because like I said, as I'm watching this happen, we're reading this story, and it's like they keep asking Moses why they brought him out of slavery, and like, well, we don't have any water to drink, or we don't have any food to eat, and God keeps blessing them with what they're asking for. It's like they keep forgetting that, hey, every other time that you needed something, including when you were praying to him when you were in slavery, right, he delivered. So what are you worried about, right? You should just know that God's going to handle this. Now, as I say that, I realize how laughable that is, because here I am, right, like complaining about life too. Not like they were, but I mean, I can't say that. That's a judgment. But there are things that I get caught up on too. I'm not necessarily saying to God, like, oh, thanks God, you put me in this position. I'm definitely not saying that. But there's just certain things that I need to take, that I have taken ownership of, like, well, okay, everything you've done up to this point has gotten you here. And so if you want to be there, if you want to be beyond, if you want to be successful in this way, if you want to accomplish this, then it's going to take for you to do X, Y, Z. And partially it's the work, but also it's the belief in God. It's the faith. It's the believe that it's actually going to happen. Believe that you can do it with God. So when it says, the question is, have you ever felt a lack of faith in what happened? I mean, I don't know what happened, because it's happening now. It's continuous. I've had lacks of faith in the past, and God's delivered. Just, I could think back on some things that I prayed for, that I was continuously praying on, just different situations in my life that he's gotten me out of. Legal situations, just different times where things could have gone poorly. And I mean, at one point I was in this horrible accident where the car was totaled on the highway, and all three of us walked out of there unscratched. And I remember the people in the ambulance were looking at us like we were ghosts. And the accident happened in South Carolina. When we got to the hospital in South Carolina, everybody, I guess because the town was so small, heard about us. It was wild, because when we got there, like, I think I had like a black eye or something, like, maybe, right? I think I had like a bruise under my eye, but we were literally going 80 miles an hour, and the cables cut through the wires of the car. Why didn't it just cut through the whole car? Right? Who knows? When we got to the hospital, I remember people looking at us crazily, like, oh, you're the people that was in that accident on 85. It's just like, how do you know? We just took the ambulance here. What are you talking about? Who told you about us? We had to check into a hotel that night, and the people in the hotel knew, and we're like, what is this? But things like that have happened, right? Or things like just different situations in life, like I said, legal situations or relationships, things that I've gone through, and he's delivered me through all of those things. Like, the wedding was really stressful. When we got married, I was praying about the wedding every day. Like, please let everything go right. Please let everything go right. I was praying about other things in life, about work situations, about family situations, about just making ends meet sometimes. There were so many situations in my life where I was praying to God, and he delivered on All of them. Even the ones where I felt like should have, or I would have thought they would have gone differently, they turned out so for my good that if they would have gone the other way that I thought they would gone, then I wouldn't have been as good as they are. So when it says what happened, that's what happened in all of those instances, right? But when it says, have you ever felt a lack of faith in what happened? It's happening. It's happening right now. We're going to see what happens. I have a lack of faith in myself through reading and praying and through the things that he reveals to us. It is happening. And part of the happening is we are changing, we're evolving, we're growing, we're learning, we're making mistakes and learning from them, we're figuring out all the stuff that we don't know, and we're getting better. We're learning what we're not good at. We're learning what we need help with. We're learning how to communicate with each other. We're learning all the time. And so the lack of faith is the lack of faith in myself. Ironically, my name is Faith. Weird, right? But what happened, we'll have to live and tell about it or something like that.
So, have I ever felt a lack of faith? Like, she stole my answer, guys. We just talked about this all the time. All the time. It is constant. And everything that I've always prayed for, it's like sometimes it's not the way that I want it to go, but God has brought me. Because here it is, right? If you have to live according to God's will, He gives us choices. But if you live according to God's will and you pray, stay faithful, you'll be who God needs you to be for His will.
Mm.
If
Amen.
I did not go through what I have, now some of the things I didn't were consequences that I was like, why? This happened to all of us. Why, God, why? He's probably like, because in 15 years from now, you're going to look back on this and it's going to shape who you are, who I need you to be to complete my will. You don't know what's going on at this point in time.
Whoa.
But you have to go through this. I have to tell you to go through this. So it's cool because I just watched a movie that just reminds you. He went back and saw his 12-year-old self. I was like, what would I tell my 12-year-old self? But he could not help his 12-year-old self out because he's like, if you don't go through this, you don't become who I am. But he still had to, like, you have to. That's what you have to do. You have to get knocked down sometimes. You have to not get what you want. But if you stay, even if you have a lack of faith, if you keep praying to God and He delivers, stay on that path because you'll eventually line up with God's will. But the lack of faith, you're right. The lack of faith in myself is uncanny. It's uncanny, and I still struggle with it on a day-to-day basis. But I've gotten better. So getting better is reading the Bible, right, with you. Because here's the thing, guys. When we read the Bible, we are seeing people that God, we're seeing these mystical figures that we've heard stories about, there are movies about, that struggle what we struggle with. Moses questioned God. I can't do it. I do that all the time. And God's just like, just do it. I have these goals that I want to accomplish that seem insurmountable. If you come to my house, you see a vision board. I used to hide my vision board. No, our house looks crazy. We have vision boards.
Yeah, it does.
Words,
we have
quotes,
words of affirmation, post-it
Bible
notes.
verses.
Oh my God.
Schedule's up here. We have a whiteboard. And that's what I want it to be. Because I want you to know who I am up front and what my dreams are. Now, these, like you said earlier, what I have, God has already put in my mind. And it's nothing crazy. It's just what I want to accomplish. Now, I have to have more faith in myself to implement God's will that He's given to me. And the lack of faith is something that I struggle with. But the more that I read the Bible, the more that I learn about, you have to live according to God's will. He gives us choices. But if you live according to God's will and you pray, stay faithful, you'll be who God needs you to be for His will.
Mm.
If
Amen.
I did not go through what I have, now some of the things I didn't were consequences that I was like, why? This happened to all of us. Why, God, why? He's probably like, because in 15 years from now, you're going to look back on this and it's going to shape who you are, who I need you to be to complete my will. You don't know what's going on at this point in time.
Whoa.
But you have to go through this. These historical figures that we look up to and what they went through, it just makes me know that I wasn't the only one experiencing this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so insurmountable. No, Noah, it didn't rain and he's building an ark. Job was a man of God that had everything, and God took everything away from him. Joseph had dreams and had to wait to become successful.
Mm-hmm.
His father, Israel, wrestled with God. Was a liar, took his brother's birthright, but ended up working for a liar. 20 years.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have Abraham, who wanted kids and ended up doing something, man, not being patient. And then God finally blessing him.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm reading these stories and I'm like, man, I go through the same thing that Moses went through. And I'm not talking about I'm not going to Pharaoh. Right? I'm talking about what I want to accomplish in my dreams and my goals that I visualized, that I think that align with God's will. I have a lack of faith in, and it gives me confidence to read it that other people that were great in God's eyes, that did the miracles, struggled as well. Mm-hmm. It makes me feel human. I'm being honest. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. Mm-hmm. Moses had to work too. He struggled with, I don't know if I can do this. Yes, you can. So, like, God's been doing this probably for millions of years. So, he's probably like, James, I've seen this a million times. Faith, I've seen this a million times.
Just do it.
Keep going. And that's for all of us.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why you have to read the Bible, because it still relates to this day and it's going to resonate with you. These are life lessons, because if you see Job going through it and Moses going through it and Joseph going through it, you're going through it as well. You just have to build patience as a skill and keep trusting God and pray to Him.
Yeah.
And that's all I got, guys.
Wow. Well, this was a very fun week of reading. Yes. They all have been, but this one in particular, I think, because I know more now and we've read and we follow the story, it's becoming more exciting to see. And I mean, it's just compounding on sort of the same issues which James just explained. It's compounding on the same issues that we're going through in life, that we are finding some comfort in the fact that, oh, you're not the only ones. You're not the first ones. And so we certainly don't want to be the only ones reading. So, and I know we're not, but hopefully you'll come along on this journey with us and you'll continue to listen and hopefully read along with us. Next week, what are we reading? Next week we're reading Exodus 19.
Shout it out.
Next week's we're reading Exodus 19 through 29. Exodus 19 through 29. If you're not following us on Twitter, you should, because that's where we'll put out what we're reading for the following week. You should just go ahead and, just follow us on all the platforms. Whatever social media platform you are, whether it's Facebook, we have a page on Facebook, whether it's Instagram, we have a profile on Instagram. Definitely hit the like button on this video if you're watching it on YouTube, or if you're listening to it on podcast, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and just come and find us whatever platforms you're on. As we like to say, don't take our word for it. Go to the source. Read your Bible. Did you want to give out any shout outs this week? I'll tell you one thing that's been helpful to me, and it's not a shout out, because these are some no-name brand things. I'll tell you one thing. It's so many things to absorb when we're reading, and I use these little tabs, and a lot of brands make them. I got these cheap off the internet, but look at this. Look at this. They're definitely very useful, so that's my shout out this week. As always, I definitely want to shout out Miss Damita Jo. If you're not following her, she does awesome videos. Support everything she does there on her channel. Also want to give a shout out to Pkwy North. Wonderful young man doing his thing. We're going to be wearing his gear here soon on our channel. We just like to shout out Black businesses and people who we think are doing amazing things, and those two people are doing amazing things.
Yeah, shout out myself. Yes, I'm gonna have to do this every week, but I'm gonna shout out Fourth Quarter.
Yes,
it's a sports show that we just talk about regular topics, man, that you'll love. It's a different perspective. So think about just the guys in the water cooler talking. It's not mainstream, man. You're getting honest fans' opinions of what's going on, not the journalist, not the football players. It's from our perspective. So I think you'll love it. It's different, and you'll like to listen to it. It's not cliche. So.
Well, as always, thank you so much for watching, for tuning into another episode of Is It Crazy or Is It God? Y'all be safe.
All right. Peace.
Peace.